Okay, I'm seeing more folks join, so we can start today's webinar. So good afternoon. Welcome to the 2025 Comprehensive Multimodal Corridor Plan Guidelines Update, second workshop to discuss the draft guidelines. Next slide, please. Thank you for joining us today virtually via the Zoom platform. My name is Destiny, and I work on the Commission's planning team, and I'm the primary point of contact for this effort. Today on this webinar, we have other Commission staff members attending, who I'll briefly introduce now. Joining us today is Laura Pennybaker, Planning Deputy, Bridget Driller, Associate Deputy Director, Matthew Yazgat, Senate Bill 1 Programming Deputy, and Naveen Habib, Program Manager for the Solutions for Congested Corridors program. We look forward to diving more into today's content, but first we'd like to discuss webinar logistics. Next slide, please. Participants are strongly encouraged to use the interactive features to share their thoughts at any time during the workshop. If you plan to make a comment or ask a question, please clearly state your name and your organization's name. You may raise your hand or add a comment at any point during our presentation, and we will ensure all comments are addressed as received. If you have multiple questions, share them one at a time so that we may address each question in its entirety. And finally, as a reminder, your workshop registration link and phone number are unique to you. Please do not share this information with other participants, as it duplicates the same attendee and creates confusion for Commission staff. Any questions? Okay, next slide, please. Today's workshop will focus on discussion of the draft 2025 CMCP guidelines, which were released for public review on July 1st, and which we are aiming to have complete for adoption by December 2025. We will begin with an overview of the draft guidelines and share our schedule for adoption. We will then share some discussion questions and open the floor to questions and to gather specific feedback on the draft guidelines. This will be the primary focus of our workshop today. At the end of today's workshop, we'll recap the feedback received and summarize any action items before walking through next steps, including the final adoption schedule and future engagement opportunities. In addition to verbal comments and feedback you share today, staff would greatly appreciate written comments as well. Next slide, please. So here's an overview of some of the key areas of the draft 2025 CMCP guidelines. The draft guidelines expand on equity by encouraging equitable outcomes and conducting robust engagement with historically impacted communities and marginalized groups. The updated draft guidelines specifically call out several Caltrans modal plans, including the State Bike and Pedestrian Plan and Caltrans Aviation System Plan. The draft guidelines also reference CAPTI, specifically Action S2.4, which calls for a planning process that supports a vehicle miles traveled neutral suite of investments and comprehensive multimodal corridor plans. CTC staff coordinated with Caltrans rail staff to obtain their feedback and weigh in on the draft. As a result, we've included references to the state rail plan and highlighted the importance of interregional travel via passenger rail. The updated draft includes a new appendix with up-to-date planning resources to provide policy and technical assistance to agencies conducting multimodal planning. We've included resources on accessibility, active transportation, climate change mitigation and adaptation, economic development, emergency management, and housing policy, among other policy topics. Next slide, please. Now I'll discuss the next steps in the public process for updating the draft guidelines. Next slide, please. The draft guidelines were released for a 30-day public comment period on July 1st. The comment period closes on August 1st. CTC staff will provide an informational update on the outreach process and comments received at the August CTC meeting in San Diego. The final draft document will be presented informationally at the October CTC meeting, and we anticipate final adoption at the December CTC meeting. With that, we can transition to our reflection questions. Next slide, please. We prepared some reflection questions to help garner specific feedback on the draft guidelines. We will also have time for general feedback, questions, and answers after this discussion. Our first question, what is your initial impression of the draft guidelines? And I'll just read all the questions, and then folks can raise their hand when they're ready to jump in. Our second question, are there sufficient technical and policy resources included in the draft? Lastly, what changes would you like to see in the document, if any? We encourage you to share your thoughts now, but please know we'll have time for general discussion after this, and you can always contact me to share your feedback. So I'll pause here for folks to chime in.
Hey, Destiny, this is Matthew. I am not seeing any hands raised at the moment, but I did want to call everyone's attention. So I did drop a link to the full draft CMCP guidelines in the chat function. I'll do it again in case some folks joined after I did that at the start of the workshop. But I just want to highlight that the draft CMCP guidelines do demonstrate all of the changes that are being currently proposed in highlight and bolded font. So they do stand out if you have access to the link that I just provided in the chat function.
Thank you, Matthew. And I'll wait for another minute or so to see if folks have any thoughts they want to share.
I would also just encourage anyone to put questions into the Q&A function.
And these are just a starting point to help you start thinking about, you know, how, if there are any changes you would like to see to the guidelines, and if there are more resources that would be helpful. But hearing no feedback at the moment, we can transition to our dedicated time for general questions and comments. Next slide, please. So we do welcome your feedback. Feel free to share your questions and comments now. And again, you can also separately contact me to share your thoughts at any time. I'll pause here for a couple minutes in case folks are wanting to chime in or add questions in the Q&A.
So I am monitoring Q&A and I'm not seeing any questions that have been typed in just yet.
Okay.
I just wanted to verify, like, folks can type in the Q&A, right?
Yes, they can.
Okay, yes, I have gotten some feedback that
And
they
they
can.
can also chat, I realized, in the general chat function as well.
Okay.
So,
So 2 options for writing your questions. I would be interested in just kind of buying some time here, but also, you know, if folks are not offering sort of specific feedback or questions at this time, I'm curious if it's because you don't have any, or if folks maybe just still need some more time with the document. If anyone has an opinion they would like to share on that, that would be great. Oh, thank you, Louis from OCTA. We have our first question. So will a checklist still be provided as part of the guidelines? Destiny?
I can tackle that. So the checklist in terms of what should be covered in a CMCP, that is incorporated into the Solutions for Congested Corridor Program guidelines. And that was recently adopted. And so we're not proposing any changes to the checklist as part of the CMCP guidelines update.
and Destiny, maybe I'll dovetail on that. So, I will also, from a SB1 programming perspective, let our attendees know that the Cycle 5 Solutions for Congested Corridors program guidelines development process is separate from the CMCP guidelines update process. And Naveen and I will likely be kicking off Cycle 5 SCCP guidelines development later this fall. And the checklist can certainly be a topic of conversation. If we at the commission determine that there would be any necessary changes to the checklist based on the CMCP guidelines that get adopted by commissioners later this fall, we will suggest those changes in the SCCP guidelines development process and bring that back to our stakeholders.
Thanks, Matthew.
I think we might, do we have any hands, Matthew?
Laura, if you are seeing one, I'm going to ask you to call on it because oh, nope, now I can see it. Shelly Kwan.
I can, I think, allow her to talk. So I will.
You may have to unmute her. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Shelly, go ahead.
All right. Hello. Shelly Kwan with LA Metro. I'm admittedly still processing the draft guidelines. So that's happening. But so I'm looking at the plan content section, and under considerations of broader planning goals, there is a bullet about CAPDI strategy 2.4, which is the one related to VMT neutrality for the SCCP. I'm just wondering if you can explain more what it means for plans to include this as a consideration.
Yeah, so great question. As part of the recent CAPTI update, this was one of the strategies that specifically called out the commission's work, and specifically the Solutions for Congested Corridors program, which is separate but connected to the CMCP guidelines. So as part of the update for the next round of the SCCP guidelines, my understanding is there will be additional guidance in terms of how applicants can comply with that strategy. However, we are encouraging as folks are updating their CMCPs to consider this strategy because it's connected to the Solutions for Congested Corridors program. And so that will allow applicants to be potentially more competitive. But I'll let Matthew see if he wants to jump in with more.
Yeah, Destiny. So I can cover how we'll handle this in the SCCP guidelines, but I do have a question for you. And just because I think this might be what Shelley's asking. So by including the CAPTI 2.0 Solutions for Congested Corridors strategy in the CMCP guidelines, this is not necessarily a requirement that the CMCP guidelines will be requiring CMCPs that are VMT neutral necessarily. It's really just calling out that there will be this new strategy considered in the Solutions for Congested Corridors program guidelines process. So it's mostly just a connection. It's not a new requirement. Is that a correct statement?
Yeah, so and it is on page 8, section 6.1 plan content. And at the top, it does preface by saying we understand that corridor plans are unique to each region, and so they may differ. But that said, under there's a bullet list for what plan elements should include, and this is there on the bullet list about what should be included. And the language specifically reads, support the Climate Action Plan for Transportation Infrastructure 2.0, Solutions for Congested Corridors Program Strategy, S2.4, by undertaking a planning process that supports a vehicle miles traveled neutral suite of investments and comprehensive multimodal corridor plans.
Shelley, do you have any follow-up questions based on that explanation?
I guess, well, I want to thank Matthew for sort of reading in between the lines of my question to get to the actual question. And so I'm encouraged to hear that these guidelines are not dictating that our CMCPs be VMT neutral. What I think would help in the guidelines currently is to revise the bullet so it doesn't say neutral suite of investments in comprehensive multimodal corridor plans.
Okay, we're taking note of that. I think what we can do is explore language in that bullet that, I mean, maybe better represents that the planning process itself is intended to support the development of investments within the program or potential investments for the program. And I think we can play around with that language. I would also request, Shelley, if you have something specific that you think works and is clear for practitioners, please feel free to put it in written comments and send it to us. That's always helpful. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, Laura and Destiny.
Thank you.
Definitely. Okay, so just checking Q&A box, nothing there. Would like to recognize Michelle Rousey, who is a member of our Interagency Equity Advisory Committee and who has her hand up to speak. Let me see if I can unmute her. Oh.
Oh, I think I can. I'll
Yeah,
do
it
that
does to me. If you could do that, that'd be great. Thank you.
now. Okay, go ahead, Michelle.
Thank you, guys. I'm just wondering if the language in that area can be more universal so that the general public can understand. And I would really suggest that because a lot of the, language a lot of times is in a way that most lay people can't understand, and that would be helpful to be looking at it in an angle that is simple, direct, and to the point. Thank you.
Nice. Great feedback, Michelle. Thank you. We will work on that as we consider the changes to that bullet. And I would say we will think more about that in this entire document to the degree we can.
And we have plenty of time, so I can continue to wait
Yeah,
here.
I actually have another hand raised for you, Destiny, to unmute, and it's Evelyn Espinoza.
Okay.
Oh, I did just want to ask folks, when you do unmute yourself and introduce yourself, please state the agency or organization that you represent.
All right, Evelyn, go ahead.
Hi, actually, this is Jeff Finley sitting in for Evelyn Espinoza. I'm with the Madera County Transportation Commission. I'm just curious, right now there's currently a San Joaquin Valley CMCP in process. Do these guidelines apply to that document? Because I believe it's being finalized.
That is a really good question. So generally speaking, if we would ask that you as a practitioner with a CMCP that you're preparing, look to the most recent version of the adopted guidelines to ensure consistency. And so in this case, if your plan is going to be final before these guidelines are final or shortly after these guidelines are final, we would give you some consideration there. So I think if you want to maybe have a conversation with staff offline with the specific timeline for your plan, that might help us make that decision. But definitely curious also if you have any like areas of these guidelines that you have any specific concerns about.
I don't have any specific concerns at this point in time, and we're actually not preparing the document. It's Caltrans. It's for the entire San Joaquin Valley from Kern County all the way up to Sacramento.
I think I understand now what you're talking about, which is their
Yes.
document.
Right, and I think
Okay.
it's getting close to being released.
Okay, and then we also have a very close line of communication with Caltrans systems planning staff, so we can also kind of check in on that as well. But generally speaking, the rule of thumb is that, if we would want to see consistency with the most recent version of the adopted guidelines. So we can talk about the timing of that. In fact, I'll just maybe ask that staff taking notes will include that as a follow-up.
Laura,
Matthew?
not to interrupt you, and Louis, I see your hand, so we'll get to you shortly, but Gus Alfaro from
Oh my gosh, thank
Caltrans
you. I didn't
just-
see Gus's hand. So
he
yeah,
just
I'd
raised
like
his
to give Gus a chance from Caltrans to address the
unmute.
question.
Thank you. I'll unmute Gus now. Go ahead, Gus. Gus, feel free to speak up now.
If I can try that again. How about now?
We
Yes,
can hear you now.
Okay, good. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gus Alfaro. I'm the Chief for Corridor and System Planning at Caltrans. I really appreciate that question. We are working very closely with CTC on the draft guidance, and of course, we're paying attention to all of our corridor plans that are being developed. 99, I believe, is the CMCP you're referring to, and I don't see any issues here. As a matter of fact, I'm very encouraged by the work that's being done because there is within their analysis the usage of CAPTI goals, performance measures, And so that's really great to see, and we're seeing that as well on US 50, for example, CMCP. So that's something that I'm encouraging folks within Caltrans, and then also since I'm on here, I might as well make a shameless pitch. We at Caltrans, we're also working with CTC and looking at our own guidance updates for Caltrans corridor planning process. And so I'm really appreciative to the CTC staff for hearing some of our preliminary ideas. We are in lock and step, and we're hoping to finish our guidance by spring of next year, hopefully sooner. But we are looking at very, very much the same topics: emergency planning considerations, additional training and resources, specifically data resources to do the performance measures. And also, we recently worked with the consultant on developing guidance on CAPDI alignment as well within corridor plan development. And so that information is something that we are working with our staff on, is how do we align with our state goals. And I think someone mentioned this earlier today, because I just came in the meeting not too long ago, is really being able to speak to what does that really mean? What does CAPDI alignment mean? And so it really means state goals and aligning those with our analysis and our performance measures, our strategies and solutions. And I'm really encouraged to see that happening already, even though we've just finished that internal guidance. So that's everything for me, and hopefully you guys heard all that.
Yeah, thank you, Gus. So I will unmute Lewis now. Go ahead, Lewis.
Hi, Lewis, OCTA. I had a quick question. Knowing that CMCPs are very costly to produce, is there a way CTC can include maybe a list of changes? Because what we would do, at least at OCTA, we would probably go out and do an update to a CMCP in order to make us compliant with the recent guidelines. But if there's a way for us to, like what you did here, which is highlight the changes that you made in the draft guidelines, it would help us sort of plan for that and understand what we're missing in our current CMCP and how to make it compliant with the existing guidelines. Thanks.
Thanks, Lewis. That's a very good point. And we'll continue to use this format to reflect any changes in the draft. So I think what you can plan on is, all the way up until this document is hopefully like updated or fully updated and adopted later this year, the changes should be very evident. And so, let us know if at any point, you all are unclear on anything. And I would say, just to your point around the cost to prepare CMCPs, we definitely understand that, and I guess acknowledge that updates are very much part of the process. And so we want to help you all be like robust and complete, but efficient.
Yes, thank you, Laura. And I'll add that on page 8 of the guidelines, under section plan process, it's certainly not comprehensive, but we have listed some different potential available funding resources to support plan development. So I'll encourage you to review that and let us know if you have questions. All right. So we do have plenty of time, so I will continue to
see Michelle Rousey has her hand raised again. Oh, she just took it down.
Okay.
That might be an accidental. Michelle, raise it again if we need to. Oh,
there
yes.
we go. Okay, I'll unmute you now, Michelle.
Okay, just a question. Once you do the revision of the document, can you forward it out again so that we can look at it? I'd really appreciate that.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So we can, Michelle, more specifically, we can, Destiny will address kind of the timeline for that in the next steps. But I did also want to mention for you as an EAC member that we'll also be doing like a direct outreach to EAC members for feedback as well. So we'll definitely be communicating with you and your other EAC members directly.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, any other questions or comments from participants?
I just want to highlight that staff is very much aware of the glaring typo that exists on page 9. We don't know where it came from, and we have already removed it from our current draft. It's highly distracting. Our apologies.
Thank you, Laura. With that, then I will just summarize at a high level some of the feedback we heard. We will revisit these specific comments. So thank you for providing your thoughts. So we heard that it would be helpful to revisit the language on consistency with CAPTI 2.0, and then to also consider how the language could be more readable for lay people to understand this content to the extent that we can, and to consider the timeline in terms of how CMCPs that are in development might be impacted by these new guidelines, and to make sure that changes are clearly shown, which they are currently in bold highlight, and then to ensure that we send future drafts out so folks can comment on the next iteration. So we will work on those items and addressing those comments. And with that, I think we can transition to the next slide. Okay, so in addition to the feedback that was provided today, we do ask that you submit written comments via email by August 1st. Please reach out to staff if you have additional questions or wish to discuss the draft further. And at the moment, we are not anticipating another workshop, but if we do decide that one is needed or one is requested, we will aim to hold it in September. And please stay tuned for updates at the August, October, and December commission meetings. And next slide. Okay, thank you to everyone who joined today's virtual workshop. We look forward to working with the public and our agency partners on the CMCP guidelines update. And please don't hesitate to reach out to me anytime if you have any questions or comments. My email address is shown here on the slide.
Hey, Destiny, I wanted to flag that we have gotten a question in the Q&A from an anonymous attendee. And that question is, how often will the guidelines be updated? Is there a standard cadence? So the answer to that question is no, there's not a standard cadence. We tend to undertake updates when enough time has passed that, you know, there's either new requirements that have come about due to statute, or if we feel like we need to refresh the guidelines because the practice of multimodal corridor planning has been evolving. So, you know, it's not a very solid answer, but, you know, we do attempt to update, you know, I would say these guidelines every couple cycles of the Solutions for Congested Corridors program. And if there's any follow-up to that question, please let me know.
Okay, seeing no further questions or comments, Thank you, everyone, for attending today. And again, please don't hesitate to reach out to me if you have any questions or comments. And we look forward to working with you in the future. Thank
Dusty,
you.
can I make one final plug before we jump off? So I wanted to just really encourage folks to send comments in writing to Destiny via email by August 1st. And if something isn't clear and you want to talk through it more, like please reach out. We're happy to. And if any part of the guidelines, there's a desire, to see them be more useful, like that is very helpful for us to know. Any specific language changes or clarifications you have, also very helpful. And also if they're okay, that's perfectly good to know as well. So we have a tendency to, to go with like silence or lack of communication sort of implies assent, but it's helpful for us as staff to understand if, they're useful as is. It's good for us to have that perspective as well.
All right. Thank you, Laura. Thank you to everyone who joined us today. And we'll be in touch soon. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.